So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Roswell in the 21st century is a detailed re-examination of the Roswell UFO crash case. I have studied the evidence for more than 30 years, and I now put that evidence under a microscope in a cold case examination of the facts. These facts might not please everyone. They are based on my comprehensive investigation that took years to complete, but they do lead to the conclusion that whatever fell was not built on Earth. The best of Project Blue Book is based on the 22-year-long investigation conducted by the Air Force. But the book goes far beyond that, bringing in evidence that was uncovered long after Project Blue Book was ordered terminated. Using facts that were unavailable to the Air Force investigators, I was able to prove that the Air Force manipulated the data and drew unrealistic conclusions about the UFO sightings reported to them. My different perspective shows there was more to Project Blue Book than even the Air Force knew. Both books are available at Amazon.com.
Join Patty Conklin and Healing Within Radio each week. More than entertainment, Healing Within offers educational, useful tools for everyday life. Listen for help overcoming fear, anxiety, and depression. Patty knows about eliminating cancer, MS, dementia, Parkinson's, and a host of illnesses that we face every day. Life can be good. Life is good. All you need are simple tools to start changing your life. Start right now by visiting pattyconklin.com, PATTICONKLIN. No matter where you are in the world, you can work with Patty through Skype, phone, or in person, visiting one of her retreats in Georgia. Visit pattyconklin.com today or call our offices at 404-474-0086. That's pattyconklin.com or call 404-474-0086.
The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And to find out more about the X Zone Broadcast Network and when the X Zone Radio Show airs on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. And you can also watch the X Zone Radio TV show on the X Zone TV channel that is exclusive to Simul TV on xzonetvchannel.com, where it is playing this time because of the coronavirus pandemic that has swept the world, we have it available to anyone who goes to either xzoneprime.com or xzonetvchannel.com, free of charge, 24 hours a day, with the compliments of the X-Zone, rel-mar, and of course, our affiliate and our distribution partners, Simul TV. This is hour 2 of a very special show. My guest the first hour and this hour is Kevin Randle. Kevin is the host of A Different Perspective on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. His website is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And Kevin, always a great pleasure talking to you, and I love your radio show. I listen to it all the time.
So do I. Well, thanks, Rob.
Great! It's a great show. You've got the who's who of ufology on your show. You've got Nick Redfern, Jan Harzan, the executive director of MUFON. You've got Tom Carey. You've had please help me out here.
Stephen Bassett,
Yep.
Ron Schmidt. Some of the lesser luminaries as well, people who have written books about UFOs. I've tried to bring them on and give them an opportunity to talk about their points of view. And sometimes and that's one of the things, I've talked to these people. Some of them really don't know that much about UFOs. Yeah. And I don't understand why they're writing books about UFOs, because it's very easy to see the holes in where they've taken their information. And I think you need to be get a little bit more in depth. I didn't write a UFO book until I'd been in the field for like 30 years. I'd been doing UFO articles, but that's really not the same thing. And, and I've learned from doing that sort of thing that and looking at the books that you have to go to the original sources. You cannot pick somebody's book off the shelf and say, well, I'm going to write about this case and pick a couple of other books. You've got to go to the original sources to see how the story really began, to get a real clear picture of exactly how the events unfolded.
That's the difference between you and the vast majority of others in this field, Kevin, and this is why we're so happy that you're with us tonight to help us try and put some semblance into ufology. We were talking about Roswell, we talked about Jesse Marcel, we talked about Stanton Friedman, and the list goes on. Over the years, I've been doing this show for 30 years now, and we've talked about Billy Meyer, we've talked about Daryl Sims, the alien hunter, we've talked about Dr. Roger Lear, alien implants, and it seems that everybody came out of the woodwork when it comes to UFOs and paranormal activity connected with UFOs, alien abductions, men in black, cattle mutilations, during the time when the X-Files and the other TV shows focusing on UFOs and the paranormal came on air. It seems like bang, and ironically, this was the exact same time when the internet hit the mainstream public.
If you look at the history of UFOs, you'll find out there have been periods of great activity that were not possibly influenced by any of that sort of thing. We go back to 1947 and look at the big wave of sightings that started in June of that year. There was no movie that came out to precipitate that. Of course, there was no real television at the time. The books weren't looking at it. You move to 1952, you can do the same thing and look at that. You get to 57, and some people say, well, the launch of Sputnik in October of 1957 sparked that wave, but actually they say the second one in November sparked the wave, but you have to wonder, then why didn't the first one spark the wave? If you look at it, I'm not sure the X-Files really was that influential in bringing this about. I think it's just kind of one of those coincidences that spring up. I think that when we take a look at the way things have been driven, sometimes it works the other way around, that a UFO case gets the interest of the TV producers or the news media or whomever, and that kind of springs forward from there. The other thing I kind of think of is, once you get a sighting that gets the national publicity and the news media is out there reporting on it, Other people realize, well, I had a similar experience, and they realize there's a point to go to report that. Because oftentimes they say, well, if you have a UFO sighting, check with MUFON, check with APRO, check with this person, check with that person. And it kind of feeds on itself that way. So it's not necessarily that Close Encounters of the Third Kind sparked a wave of UFO sightings. It was the other way around. I think that I don't think there's a real correlation between Close Encounters and a spike in UFO sightings. I think if I remember the statistics right, that didn't really happen. And the other thing is you had the big spike of sightings in the mid-1960s that went for a long period of time. It used to be cyclic, that it was about every 5.2 years you could expect another wave of UFO sightings, which was suggestive of some kind of, I guess, interstellar travel plan or something. But that broke down in the 60s. But we saw waves of sightings. 1973 was a big wave of sightings. I'm not sure that there was anything in the news media or on television or in the movies that would have spiked the 1973 wave. So you've got to look at the whole totality of it. You can, of course, make a statistical case going any way you want, but I don't really think there's a trigger of this sort of thing. It's just how the mood of the people circulates, I guess. You know, what's going to be the big fad this year? This year it happens to be UFOs. Next year it's ghosts. The year after that it's short skirts. I don't know.
I'll stick with short skirts personally.
Explains a lot.
Well, thank you. Listen, when it comes to we've talked about UFOs. What about alien abductions? Travis Walton, Betty and Barney Hill.
I did a book with Russ Estes and Bill Cohn. Bill Cohn was a clinical psychologist. Russ Estes was a documentarian. I say was a documentarian. Russ passed away a number of years ago. We did a book on alien abductions called The Abduction Enigma, and we looked at all of that stuff carefully. Mm-hmm. We interviewed, I think it was 316 abductees. We found that a large percentage of them were asexual or homosexual. I'm not making any pejorative statement here. It was just something we found in the abductee population, you might say, which suggested to me that there may be other factors we should look at. How many were left-handed? Does it fit into the population? How many were college educated as opposed to not college educated? That sort of thing. I think the majority of the abductions are relatable to terrestrial phenomenon. I think I was the first one to ever report the aliens coming into the house. It was a case in Lehi, Utah in 1973. Pat Roach was the woman. Said they came into the house and took her and some of her children out to have them examined. I think it was the first time it was ever reported. Now there's others that claim that. But her case was clearly, to me, it was clearly an episode of sleep paralysis, which wasn't understood that well in 1976 when I interviewed her, which we understand now, and her symptomology seemed to fit sleep paralysis perfectly, which is not to say all alien abductions are explainable as sleep paralysis, but it's certainly something like that. And we explained that in the Abduction Enigma. We also looked at satanic ritual abuse, which blew up in the public arena in the same time frame, mm-hmm. and how that was kind of fed by the media and the reports coming out. And when all was said and done, there really wasn't that. It was all kind of a manufactured mystery, and people getting hysterical over things that just weren't true.
You and I have to take our break. Please stand by, Kevin. Exonation Kevin Randle is our guest this hour. www.kevinrandleblogspot.com. Kevin is the host of A Different Perspective on the X Zone Broadcast Network. To find out more about Kevin, you can go to his blogspot. Once again, it's www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. To listen to Kevin, just go to xzbn.net, check out the broadcast schedule, and look for A Different Perspective. Dates and times are all there. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Are you looking for psychic services that empower as well as provide accurate information? Jenny is a third-generation psychic with extensive esoteric training. A practicing professional intuitive for over 30 years, her accuracy is astounding. While most psychics can read what will happen to you if you don't change directions, Jenny understands the future is subjective. While there is a river of time we all traverse, that river has many waves, eddies, currents, and tributaries from which to choose. With Jenny as your guide, you can explore the many possible outcomes in the river of time and navigate your course to the one of your liking. Take control of your future. Book your life-changing session with Jenny today at www.gen-e.net. That's www.gen-e.net.
Mission Evolution is dedicated to the well-being of the planet and animals, as well as the evolution of humankind. One major factor threatening all three is increasing toxicity. Heavy metals and other environmental toxins are poisoning our bodies, deteriorating our brains, blocking our spiritual connection, and shortening our lives. Yet these poisons are extremely difficult to remove. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, and I recently became aware of a product created from the marriage of nature and nanotechnology called Vitality. It's formulated from zoolite, whose crystalline structure binds toxins, gently carrying them out of the body. The light is only as clear as the window through which it shines. Clear your body, shine your light into the world. Visit vitalityhappens.com for a 20% discount. Enter code PATHHOME.
In the mid-1990s, I was approached by a young woman who believed she'd been abducted by alien creatures. In conversations, I began a journey that took me not into the world of interstellar travel, but back through time into past lives. Under hypnotic regression administered by a professional rather than describing abduction, Jenny, as she is called, begins to tell a tale of horror in 19th century London. Her unbelievable past life seems to connect with Jack the Ripper and other monsters of the past. Throughout the session, Jenny provides a rich detail of her past lives that links some of the most horrific killers in history to one another. Using the resources of a university library in the pre-internet day, I was able to verify some of Jenny's claims. She has knowledge that wasn't readily available to a suburban housewife. Does this prove the reality of her tales? Conversations attempts to answer that and other provocative questions. Conversations is available at Amazon.com.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Kevin Randle is my special guest. He is the host of A Different Perspective on the X Zone Broadcast Network. His blogspot is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. Kevin, there was a case, I don't know if you talked about it on your show yet or not, where a UFO allegedly knocked out nuclear missile silos.
Well, we did do that. It's from the Belt, Montana, Maelstrom Air Force Base in November. I think in November of 1967. Mm-hmm. And I had a missileer on the program a number of months ago that talked about his experiences in that sort of thing. But this was a case that was of great national security importance. Because if an outside force is able to disable a whole flight of missiles, that kind of negates our response to an unprovoked attack. And so the Air Force was very worried about that. And they never really explained how that happened, how the outside force disabled the missiles. There were UFO sightings in the area at the time this was taking place, and I think the security crew above one of the facilities actually saw the UFO, and the facility controlled, the command facility controlled flight of 10 missiles. I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head, flight of 10 missiles, and they all went down in a matter of minutes with one another. They were able to get them back online, but it took them several days to do it. And so that became a very important security issue for the United States Air Force. How can our missiles be disabled from outside? And although the Air Force went to great lengths to say, well, no, there were no UFOs involved, there is clear evidence there was UFOs involved.
Now,
and there have been other cases like that in other locations where missiles were taken offline by some outside influence.
Now, has this only happened in the United States, or has this happened around the world in other locations? For example, in London, in the United Kingdom, I should say, Russia, or other parts of Europe?
I don't know. I don't know. I would suspect that it would at least have happened in the Soviet Union. I do not know. I haven't really explored that question at all. I was interested in the United States because I was able to talk to some of the people involved in that and learn some information about it from the inside. Robert Hastings has explored that aspect of the UFO phenomenon quite a bit. I think his book was UFOs and Nukes, or Nukes. I think it's UFOs and Nukes, or Nukes and UFOs, and he goes into great depth. And he's interviewed literally dozens of military personnel, including officers that were involved down in the missile silos when things went awry. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, I've tried to get him on the program, but his health hasn't been that great. Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. Hasn't been that great, and so he wanted me to wait a while before he would commit to being on the program. But I've talked to him a number of times. I know him. I've been when he lived in New Mexico. I've met with him any number of times. So that's a very interesting aspect of it. And so when the Air Force says there were no national security aspects to UFO sightings, that turns out to be untrue. There are national security aspects to UFO sightings, especially if you've got a UFO sighting and the missiles all go offline, which is apparently what happened at Maelstrom.
How about Randlesham Forest? I know that you've done a couple of shows on that incident.
I talked to John Burroughs, talked to Jim Pedeston, and had Charles Halt on a couple of programs as well, and looked into that sort of thing. Very credible individuals. I don't know what they saw in the forest. I think John Burroughs is going to, when I talk to Nick Redfern on my next program, we're going to be talking about that specifically, because I think he's been meeting with Burroughs, and Burroughs' theory seems to be that there was some kind of British experimentation going on in the area that might have influenced part of the Rendlesham Forest activities. And Burroughs on my program suggested that it wasn't just the 3 nights that we all talk about for the Rendlesham Forest sightings and the attempts to get close to the object, but there was other sightings that went on before and after that may be related to that as well. And that was why he was suggesting some kind of experimentation going on there, which means it's terrestrial as opposed to extraterrestrial. I know Halt and Pedeston seem to be of the opinion it was some kind of an extraterrestrial involvement. So, there's one of the problems with the UFO field. Now we've got one of the guys who's deeply involved in that sightings. I mean, Pedeston, Burroughs, and Halt are the 3 guys you always hear about involved in this thing. And now one of them is suggesting, well, maybe there was something else going on. And we explored that a little bit on the program I did with John Burroughs. And if you go to my blog and type in John Burroughs in the search engine, you can find the program. You can listen to it there, or you can go to the X Zone Broadcast Network and look at the programming there as well, and hear what John Burroughs had to say in the last program we did about how his perspective has kind of morphed over the last couple of years.
Is this common within the UFO community, where you have people who at one time believed so heavily in something, and then based on their own investigative prowess or new evidence that comes to light, they actually change their ideas?
I think what you get mostly in the UFO field is you've got people coming in with a preconceived notion, and they stick pretty much to that. They don't want to be accused of flip-flopping or changing their opinions because, God forbid, we learn something new and alter what we thought was the truth before and get to something better. But something like that, there are cases where the witnesses have falling outs and they go off in different directions. Lubbock Lights comes to mind. The professors in Lubbock, Texas, who saw the lights the first couple of nights and couldn't identify them and were very, very excited about the whole thing. Toward the end, they went off in different tangents with one another, especially after Carl Hart took the photographs of the Lubbock Lights, the blobs of light in a V formation flying over the town. I think he took 5 photographs, 4 of which have survived. And then the professors, or at least one of them's opinion changed. Mm-hmm. He got, I think, annoyed that Carl Hart seemed to be taking the thunder away from them, and all Hart did was take some photographs. So, yeah, you see that sort of thing going on, that the witnesses kind of have falling outs, or they do one-upmanship to move into a better position. We saw some of that in the Roswell case, I think, with Frank Kaufman, for example. His story kept getting better and better as the investigation continued, and I think it was to bring the spotlight more on him than some of the others. So, that does transpire, but I think you're going to see that in any kind of an arena where you get the clashing personalities.
Is there a connection between the Lubbock Lights and the Phoenix Lights?
I don't think so.
What's your opinion of the Phoenix Lights?
I think it's mostly terrestrially based. Yeah. I think that there's very good evidence that flares were part of it. There was a series of sightings of a large triangular craft that I think, if I remember correctly, it moved from Tucson up toward the northwestern corner, up toward the Las Vegas area, or may have gone the other direction. I forget exactly which way it went. But that's really not kind of connected. It happened in the same time frame as the Phoenix Lights, but it really wasn't part of that. So you've got all of this stuff going on. And that's the other thing you have to do in UFO research is if you've got something like that going on, you've got to kind of separate what are the misidentifications for what is really mysterious. And there's all kinds of experimentation going on out of Area 51, which is just north of Las Vegas, of course, that may account for some of that stuff. But I think with the Phoenix Lights, some of the best video footage is of flares, and I think it's pretty well established that it was of flares. But there's this other core of sightings that's not quite as easily explainable.
Speaking about Area 51, any input on the infamous Bob Lazar?
I've never really looked into that in depth. I know Stan said that his claims of specific college education didn't pan out. Mm-hmm. I know George Knapp swears by Bob Lazar. There is some documentation. He did work at Area 51 for at least a short period of time. I don't know in what capacity. I've just never been very impressed with his tales and haven't explored it as deeply as I could have, I suppose. I just didn't really care that much for the tale and didn't want to waste my time.
When we come back from the news at the bottom of the hour that we're going to be going to in about a minute and a half from now, Kevin, I'd like to talk to you about the Bermuda Triangle. I know that you've been talking about that on your show recently, and it's a fascinating topic. I've done diving in the Bermuda Triangle. I've gone down to the Bimini Wall, and it's a heavily trafficked area when it comes to sea and air transportation, and I'd like to talk to you about it.
I'll be here.
All right. Kevin Randle's my special guest, X-Zone Nation. You can visit Kevin's website at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And Kevin is heard 7 days a week on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Just go to xzbn.net. Check out the dates and the time when you can listen to Kevin, and you can listen to it right there at xzbn.net. This is the X-Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, and we come to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and our affiliates right around the world, and on the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV at simultv.com.
How would your life change if you could develop the business and personal skills that you need in order to make more money? Do you want to learn how to achieve your big life goals faster? Then go to findhiddenmoney.com and get the Goal for It online course. The course teaches you how you can set and achieve your biggest goals while completely overcoming the roadblocks to your goals so that you can realize your dreams and imagine more success. Go to findhiddenmoney.com.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. Audience, if you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Memorable dynamic presentations are a not-so-secret weapon in the business world. Do you have a powerful message that must be shared, but you haven't found a way to deliver that message? Do you want to be known as a top public speaker who gets amazing results? Are you ready to create and deliver your powerful message? Thomas Hides can help you create and deliver your speech to get the results you desire. Visit iconquality.com.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada. You can find out all about the great programming we have available for you, 7/24/365 on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, including A Different Perspective with my host of this segment, again, is the one and only Kevin Randle. His show, A Different Perspective, can be found on xzbn.net. Now, Kevin, you and I were talking during the break that, you don't want to come across as negatives. And I said to you, and I mean this, my friend, you're not coming across negative. You're coming across as a well-centered person. But
I think when people look at this stuff, they say, well, every time you ask a question, he's got a kind of a negative twist on it. And there are some very good UFO cases out there that are not easily explainable in the mundane. Doesn't necessarily mean they're extraterrestrial, sure, but they're not easily explainable. I took a look at the Project Blue Book files, which is the Air Force investigation of it, and I selected from that a number of the cases that I think are very good cases that could have changed the direction of the conversation had the Air Force been completely candid about what they were saying about those cases, and I put those in a book called The Best of Project Blue Book, simply because I thought it important that we look at the evidence that the Air Force gathered and then provide additional commentary on it based on what other investigations have shown since the Air Force closed down the Project Blue Book, and come to a slightly different investigation. The Lubbock Lights, for example, the Air Force said was birds. What's a preposterous explanation? Is there a good terrestrial explanation? For some of them, yes. But Carl Hart Jr. took photographs, and there's no explanation for those photographs. And you come down to, well, it's either a hoax or it's some kind of alien spacecraft. There's no two ways about it on those specific photographs.
Well, let me ask you, if the photographs would have been taken with today's digital, technologically advanced cameras, would that have made a difference? I
think so. I mean, he's dealing with a 35 millimeter single reflex camera lens in 1951. Yeah. And if you get my best camera is like 26 megapixels or something like that, and it's not even top of the line anymore. I think if you had something like that, you'd get much better images, and you could gather much more information from it. Carl Hart told me when I interviewed him in 1996, I said, what did you photograph? And he says, I still don't know. What we know is 99% of the UFO photographs are taken by teenage boys, and 99% of those are faked. And almost invariably, when they get older, they confess the hoax. But here we were. Carl Hart took the photographs when he was 19 in 1951. I interviewed him, I think, in 1996. So he was in his 60s, and he says, I still don't know what I photographed. Wasn't saying it was an alien spacecraft. He said, well, I still don't know what I photographed. And I think that the Air Force wasn't fair in that investigation. They weren't fair in the Lubbock Lights investigation. And these are the kinds of things I brought together so we could take a look at those and see if maybe there was something more we could learn by studying those cases.
Before we go on to the Bermuda Triangle, I have to ask you about the MJ-12 papers.
Bogus. Completely and totally bogus. I actually found a document classified top secret Majestic. Mm-hmm. It's a logistics plan that deals with the possible invasion of Western Europe by the Soviet Union. It was a logistics plan to deal with that specific invasion, and it was released it was created in 1952. It's since been declassified. The MJ-12 documents, top secret classified Majestic or Majestic 12, came out at the same time. You are not going to have two top secret projects with the same name, because that's going to possibly compromise one or the other or both of them. So that's another indication that they're bogus. But the real problem is there's no provenance for them. Where did they come from? We can't get to the original source. We can trace it to Bill Moore, and that's it. They stop there. There are anachronisms in the documents that suggest that they were not created at the time frame they were created, and there are other problems with them. I think the majority of UFO researchers, and I say the majority of UFO researchers, believe them to be true. I talked to Ryan Wood not that long ago, Ryan Wood being one of the proponents of the MJ-12 documents, and I got the impression he still believes, but he isn't as deeply involved in the research today as he was 5 years ago. So, and I think I was a little bit more up to date into what was going on in the Majestic 12. But I think the majority of the people who have looked at the MJ-12 documents, both proponents and opponents, have come to the same conclusion that they're all bogus. They're all bogus. And there are a few holdouts on that, but I think that's where they stand today.
Travis Walton case.
Pardon me?
The Travis Walton case, Fire in the Sky.
Talked to Mike Rogers on the program, and we spent an hour talking about the Walton case and his experiences. I've talked to, I think, another one of the men who was with Walton on that expedition, on that woodcutting expedition. I talked to Travis Walton himself. If there is alien abduction, I would expect it to be more like something that Walton described, meaning a target of opportunity, as opposed to these longitudinal studies that we get from some of the other UFO researchers. I think of John Mack and Bud Hopkins, for example, where the people are abducted multiple times over a period of years. Talked to Terry Lovelace about his abduction experience. And I don't know whether he was actually abducted or it was some kind of an experimentation done by the Air Force OSI. Clearly, he had some kind of an experience, and we talked to him on the program. I found him very credible in what he was saying. I'm not sure that his conclusions of being abducted are accurate. They may well be, but it was a single event, and I am more predisposed to accept that as what's going on, as opposed, as I said, to the longitudinal studies they talk about.
So where do you think ufology is going to go in the future? Do you think it's going to take a more serious role in the investigation of the phenomena, or do you think that it's going to go the way it has been all these years with nothing new happening and a lot of supposition, a lot of shaky photographs with people like yourself trying to make heads and tails of what the facts are and what the fiction is?
Let's look at the abduction enigma.
Okay.
Here's a book that we wrote 20 years ago about alien abduction. We made some suggestions on how to improve the research. We have case studies. We've got all those we need. We need to take the research somewhere else. And here we are 20 years later. They're doing the same kind of research. Put the person under hypnosis, gather the information you want. We actually found by studying the transcripts of the researchers how they were implanting some of the memories in the witnesses. They weren't doing it consciously for the most part. They were doing it inadvertently. They didn't understand how easy it is to lead someone in a state of hypnotic regression. But we suggested other things that could be done that may improve it. And that gets us back to the idea of our discovery of the disproportionate number of homosexuals who report alien abduction. Are there other traits that we could identify that are overrepresented in the abduction population that might suggest some kind of solution to what the abductions really are? But they're not doing that. They're doing the same things they did 20 years ago. And so we're stuck. We're stagnating. And we've been doing that literally for the last half century.
Let me ask you this in all fairness. When you're talking about the homosexuals, are you talking about the male race, or are you talking about male and female?
Male and female, both. We did, I think, like I said, I think it was 316 people, and we found around 30% of them had some kind, they were either asexual or homosexual. And you look at the general population and you realize they are disproportionately represented in the population, the abduction population. Now, if we found like 25% of them are left-handed, they would be overrepresented in the abduction population. Is there a reason for that? What about blood types? These are characteristics you cannot see, so you have to wonder, is there something else going on? And would that give us a clue as to exactly what the abduction phenomenon is? Well, and that research has not been followed up on.
Why not? It makes total sense.
I think it's because the abduction researchers are looking for great stories of alien abduction. They're not looking for solutions. And I think that's kind of where Terry Lovelace takes us in a little bit of a different tack with his abduction case, where it may be suggestive of something induced by the Air Force Office of Special Investigation or an Air Force experimentation going on to elicit some kind of specific response and maybe learn something about the human psyche, which means his experiences are real. They just don't happen to be extraterrestrial in nature.
My friend, you and I have to take our final break for this second hour. Thank you so much for being with us, Kevin. It's always a great pleasure having you on the show, and I love listening to a different perspective. Keep the great work up. When we come back, Kevin, I do want to get right to the Bermuda Triangle, so please stand by. Exo Nation, Kevin Randle is my special guest, and his website is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network and on Simul TV. Don't go away.
was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
In the mid-1990s, I was approached by a young woman who believed she'd been abducted by alien creatures. In conversations, I began a journey that took me not into the world of interstellar travel, but back through time into past lives. Under hypnotic regression administered by a professional rather than describing abduction, Jenny, as she is called, begins to tell a tale of horror in 19th century London. Her unbelievable past life seems to connect with Jack the Ripper and other monsters of the past. Throughout the session, Jenny provides a rich detail of her past lives that links some of the most horrific killers in history to one another. Using the resources of a university library in the pre-internet's day, I was able to verify some of Jenny's claims. She has knowledge that wasn't readily available to a suburban housewife. Does this prove the reality of her tales? Conversations attempts to answer that and other provocative questions. Conversations is available at Amazon.com.
Mission Evolution is dedicated to the well-being of the planet and animals, as well as the evolution of humankind. One major factor threatening all three is increasing toxicity. Heavy metals and other environmental toxins are poisoning our bodies, deteriorating our brains, blocking our spiritual connection, and shortening our lives. Yet these poisons are extremely difficult to remove. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, and I recently became aware of a product created from the marriage of nature and nanotechnology called Vitality. It's formulated from zoolite, whose crystalline structure binds toxins, gently carrying them out of the body. The light is only as clear as the window through which it shines. Clear your body, shine your light into the world. Visit vitalityhappens.com for a 20% discount. Enter code PATHHOME.
Kevin Randle is my guest for this hour, www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. He's the host of A Different Perspective on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and you can find out when Kevin's show is on. And it's on 7 days of the week. All you need to do is go to xzbn.net and look for A Different Perspective. Kevin, as always, great having you on the show, my friend. And as I said to you both on air and off, I thoroughly enjoy your show. Keep up the great work. And let's talk about the Bermuda Triangle, because you've been talking about that recently. What can you tell us about the Bermuda Triangle?
This all began because there were two programs I stumbled across on TV, The Curse of the Bermuda Triangle, and Josh Gates did his Expedition Unknown, and he was in the Bermuda Triangle. And I was worried that they were going to look at Flight 19, that's the 5 Avenger torpedo bombers that disappeared together all at once.
Wow.
1945. And I thought we would end up getting more nonsense. I wasn't as much worried about Josh Gates as I was about the Curse of Bermuda Triangle, because I know how these things normally put together. And I watched the programs, and I was pleasantly surprised about it. But what happened strangely is I had gotten an email from a fellow named Doug Westfall, who had a theory about what happened to the 5 Avenger torpedo bombers. And in Josh Gates' program, he spoke to a guy named Andy Morocco, who had a different theory. And so I contacted both those guys and had him on A Different Perspective to talk about their what they thought the theories were, what caused the airplanes to disappear. But the Bermuda Triangle has been something that people have talked about since.
Kevin, are you there? Hello, Kevin.
Yes.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Kevin. Welcome back. Kevin, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we lost you there for a second. You're back. You were talking to us about bringing Andy and one of the other guests from the TV show onto your show, and we lost you for a few seconds there.
Okay, so I pick it up with Doug Westfall and Andy Morocco.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right now, this minute?
Yeah.
No cue or anything? Okay.
No cue.
So, strangely enough, I had a communication with Doug Westfall and Andy Morocco, Andy Morocco had been on the program with Josh Gates to talk about the disappearance of the Avengers. They had two different theories. One of them was that the flight disintegrated, meaning the members of it flew off in a different direction when they realized they were flying around in circles over the Atlantic Ocean. And the other was that they all went down together. And the record created at the time by the Navy was Taylor, who was leading the Avenger flight, said, when the first man is down to 10 gallons of gas, we'll all ditch together, meaning they were lost somewhere over the Atlantic and he didn't think they were going to make landfall. So I began exploring that sort of thing, try to get some idea where it went. I got an email from a friend, John Steiger, who sent me a picture of one of the Marines who was in Flight 19, his headstone. And I'm thinking, how can he have a headstone at the Arlington National Cemetery if everybody disappeared? I wrote to Arlington and they said, well, no, we have a segment of the cemetery dedicated to those whose bodies we didn't recover. They were lost in combat. They were lost at sea. They were buried at sea. There were veterans that donated their bodies to science. There's a segment for that. And this fellow, George Panessa, was one of those. So that kind of answered that question. But there was a telegram that he supposedly sent to his family some weeks after the flight all disappeared. Was that a hoax? And so I followed up on all of that. I did quite a bit about it on the my blog, and I've done a whole program about it on a different perspective as well, explaining all of this stuff. So the disappearance of Flight 19, the Avengers, seemed to spark this idea that there was something mysterious going on in this area known as the Bermuda Triangle. Planes and ships vanished without a trace. And looking at the evidence, I actually had a sort of a first-hand experience with that. One of the units I was an intelligence officer for in the late 1970s, early 1980s, had lost an aircraft in the Bermuda Triangle. And it's written in all the books. It's a C-119 lost in, I think, July of 1965. And while I was at the headquarters, I asked them about the airplane they lost.
Right.
And they told me that it had been plagued with electrical problems, that they found wreckage. And they wanted to know if I wanted to see some of it because they had it down in the hangar. So it didn't disappear without a trace. Wreckage had been found. And the electrical problems, if they were flying into the Bermuda Triangle area at dusk, and if you lose your electrical system, you lose all your electronic instruments. And if there's a slight haze, even a slight haze, even though it looks perfectly clear, there's a slight haze, you cannot distinguish the horizon, then you're in deep trouble if you do not have the artificial horizon in your aircraft. And you're liable to fly into the ground, and it's happened more than once to people who've lost their orientation. John F. Kennedy Jr. is a perfect example of losing his visual orientation in less than ideal conditions. And their theory was that the plane suffered an electrical malfunction at that period of time, and they unfortunately flew into the ground or into the ocean. But the wreckage was found. And then you look deeper into it, you find, well, wreckage has been found from some of these things. The Rain Sulphur Queen supposedly disappeared without any signs of wreckage. And yet wreckage was recovered, and I've got pictures of it on my blog, of some of that wreckage on my blog. And we learned more and more about that. So the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle isn't so much something paranormal as it being a manufactured mystery. And that's another example of people reading a book. Well, I'm going to do a book about the Bermuda Triangle, and reading a whole bunch of books and just gathering the same information, but not going to the original sources. Because when you get back to the original sources, you find out some of them just aren't as mysterious as they thought. One of them was a German ship named the Freya, who supposedly sailed from Cuba and was found drifting and abandoned in the Bermuda Triangle. Turns out there's a port by the same name in Mexico, on the western coast of Mexico, and the Freya was not found in the Bermuda Triangle. It was actually found in the Pacific Ocean. And so when you get to the original sources, you discover that it's just not quite as mysterious. Lloyd's of London, I believe, did a statistical analysis of the losses in the Bermuda Triangle and discovered it was just as you would expect of an area that large with that kind of traffic. There was nothing abnormal about the number of accidents, being naval accidents or aircraft accidents in the area. So there's really nothing mysterious going on other than the mystery that's been manufactured by so many writers.
But what about the alien connection that's been noted in a couple of the stories of the Bermuda Triangle?
I found absolutely no connection to that. I think when Berlitz looked at it, he said on Flight 19, Taylor had radioed that, said to him, "Don't come after me. They look like they're from outer space." And the problem with that is if you go back to the transcripts from the trials or the inquiries into the disaster, you can find the quote, "Don't come after me," but the second quote you cannot find in the transcripts. And that appeared in the mid-1970s from a guy who says he had been researching it since it began, and it came from an unidentified ham radio operator who heard the second part of the quotation. I just don't think there's any validity to that. It's just something that appeared in the middle of the research into it. So it's just that sort of thing. You go back to the original source, and that quote does not appear until 30 years after the fact.
So am I to gather that there is no mystery about the Bermuda Triangle, that the lost continent of Atlantis is nowhere near the Bermuda Triangle, that it is just basically an area where there's a lot of traffic, both nautical and aircraft, that these things just happened?
I think that's absolutely correct. There's just nothing there that would suggest it. I believe the lost continent Atlantis, by the way, was Santorini, which is an island in the Mediterranean where the volcanic explosion destroyed the Minoan civilization about 5,000-6,000 years ago. I think that's where the lost continent of Atlantis myth arose. It's not in the Atlantic Ocean; it's there in the Mediterranean. But I just don't think there's anything mysterious there. Lawrence Kusch did a book called The Bermuda Triangle Solved, and anybody who wants to get a real good perspective about what happens in the Bermuda Triangle, that's the resource you need to take a look at. Look at Berlitz's book and the John Spencer's books and the other books, but take a look at his book as well, because I think it explains it as better than anything.
I often wonder why Charles Berlitz got into writing about the Bermuda Triangle. He really didn't have any expertise on the topic.
We run into that all the time in the UFO field. People with no real expertise decide, I'm going to do a book on UFOs, and there you go. His book became a bestseller. It hit at the right time. And
it's timing.
It's all timing. I wish I could do that.
Well, I'm sure you will, my friend. Listen, we've got about a minute left. Let our listeners know how they can find out more about you, where they can buy your great books.
The blog is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. There's a search engine on it, so you type in a specific name or something like that. It'll find all the articles I've done on it. Books are available at Amazon. I like to mention Roswell in the 21st Century because I think it's a great cold case analysis as well. The Best of Project Blue Book is the one that just came out a couple of weeks ago, and it's an analysis of Blue Book cases based on additional research that I was able to do long after Blue Book closed. And Encounter in the Desert deals with the Lonnie Zamora sighting in great depth, and I think it provides a good analysis of that case as well.
Kevin Randle, www.blogspot.com, also a different perspective on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Kevin, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. A great pleasure. Continued success, my friend. And it's a great pleasure talking to you anytime. And I also enjoy thoroughly working with you every Wednesday doing a different perspective. So thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
We'll be back on the other side of this break. at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as we continue here in the X Zone. Don't go away.